So it's connecting. It's just showing it's connecting. So we should be there anytime soon. Going live. This may take a few seconds. So whoever is watching me live, you know that I'm struggling. LinkedIn doesn't seem to have like me today.
What's the YouTube link? Put it in the chat.
My Geeksters link.
We can put it the YouTube link into LinkedIn.
Yeah, I've already put a Restream link so people can join that too. So there's 3-4 links that people can join. Yeah, so we are a LinkedIn page is live, so we should be on our page right now. We should be on our page. Yeah, there we are. We are. Okay, we are live.
We're live?
We are live. Yeah, we are. We are. Awesome. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you. We took 7 minutes to figure out how LinkedIn Live works. Apologies for the wait. I promise you that the next time we'll try and make that seamless. But with no further ado, really wanted to thank you for joining this live session. My name is Benjamin. I am the CEO and founder of MyKicksters. And this is a lunchtime chat with my folks across Australia, doing some awesome work in the space of fractionals, which I'm going to talk about more in today's session. Now, the reason why we want to bring this session today was as a startup founder, and a number of people in my community have kept asking this, Benji, what is the deal with things called fractionals? Who are these people? What do they do? Seems like the new breed of people who got infected by some virus or something. So what is happening, and why is there is a big shift on the demand for these types of skill sets and these types of engagement? So you know what, I said, let me bring my friends together. They're doing some awesome work in the space, and they will be able to give you the most lived experience of being a fractional and also how to help you get started. So today I have a guest across the country. I have Angela, Zach, and Reese. In a minute, they're going to introduce themselves, and we'll dive deep into the topic about fractions. So, Angela, please.
Hi, well, thanks, Benji, for having me here. I'm Angela, the co-founder and CEO of Shepherd, a fractional leaders marketplace. We've been live, I would say like soft launch for over a year now, and we are actively placing startups with fractional leaders, doing the matchmaking for them. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Zach?
Hi, everyone. Zach. I run a community called the Fractional Exec Community, which is around helping people kind of move into the space and understand what's required. I also wear a fractional hat myself, working as a fractional go-to-market and sales lead, and have been trying to figure this out for about 3 years now, 3.5 years. And I'm dialing in from Noosa, where it is currently 22 degrees, and that's why I've got thermals and a hoodie on. It's frosty.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. And Reese?
Yeah, thanks, Benji. Great to be here. Yeah, my name's Reese. So I've actually been working fractionally now for a couple of years. It was actually Benji who kind of shone a light on the fact that I was doing that. I didn't kind of realize that I was actually being a fractional worker. I finished up working as a full-time employee. A few people said to me, "Hey, Reese, we want you to work for us," and I started to work out how I could do that, and had about four businesses that I was working with at any one time. I'm using about 3 at the moment, and also myself as a fractional CEO, setting up a fractional marketplace as well. So Fraxio, we've just onboarded our first 2 businesses to be in that as well, and we'll be looking to connect fractionals with some fractional work pretty soon. So looking forward to the chat.
Nice. What I like about all of you, you've got a kind of a skin in the game. You've done this. You've seen the good, bad, and ugly, and in many cases, you are at the evolution of this whole concept of fractional. Like it's not something that is it has existed, but it is starting to exist more in it formalized and more structured in recent times. I think at least after COVID into my memory, but pretty exciting. Now, I wanted to know why this fractional thing is becoming so attractive right now, because that's the biggest question of the day. Like, what is fractional? Like, give me the basic definition of what it is, and then why it is an attractive proposition for people like Reese or Zach in your case. Why did you choose this? But what is fractional in the first place?
Who's gonna lay the definition?
You go, Zach. You go.
Okay, look, for me, fractional executive is somebody with senior experience who comes into work, could be 1 or 2 days a week, usually for a defined period, could be 6 to 9 months, and really gets involved in the company, boots and all, to help do things. So the boots and all thing, I think, is really important. I find that it's a big difference from a traditional consultant who is really outside the tent. They may have a deliverable, which is a report or an analysis or even some training, but you're not in there. So, when I work as a fractional, I am in the systems. I'm in HubSpot, I'm in Slack, Teams, Discord, chat, whatever it is. I'm in, I have an email address. I'm in the leadership meeting. You really are part of the team and helping to drive that company forward. How do I go, Angela, Reese? Anything to add?
That's actually pretty on the money for most of the things that I do as well. I think for me, being a fractional kind of found me, and it was a bit of a natural sort of progression, because I didn't realize really that my skills were so diverse. So not only was there an option for me to actually do more than one pigeonholed role. I could go out and do, I could do some strategy work, I can do some BD work, and I can put my experience and value into those businesses. So I think fractional as a defined sort of space, as Zach has kind of outlined, has really started to solidify over the last couple of years, I think. And now there's some really solid definitions, but I think more than anything, it just gives people flexibility, and I guess people like me who have been around the block a little bit, who are a bit older, actually finding full-time work as a 50 plus person can be difficult. So you're too experienced or all that. So I found that it just gave me that space to be able to be and provide the sort of skills that I can be without costing the world for startups, scale ups, and small medium businesses as well.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think you guys defined it quite well. The other way I like to put it, because I'm a product marketer, right? It's, I would say, leadership outcomes on subscription. Essentially, you're just renting that leadership for the duration of your business requirements, right? And it's very, very outcome driven. So it's not about time put in. You're not really talking about 1 day a week. And that's sort of how a lot of us calculate the value, because that's sort of the known value of leadership. It really comes down to what outcomes can you help achieve at a given time. And that can change from month to month, quarter to quarter. But we see that traditionally, typically fractional engagement can range anywhere between 3 months to 9 months. And at which point you start to wonder, like, okay, should we start to move you in-house, or like find ways to make this a more of a sustainable model? So that's how I see it.
Thanks for that, and really good definition. And Zach and Reese also giving a different dimension from the fraction perspective. Angela, I have a follow-on question to you. I know Shepherd is helping high growth startups in having this leadership on subscription model. But as you building Shepherd, what are some of the market signals that you're seeing as a trend in the adoption of such a service? Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing?
Interestingly, like I think where the demand is coming from are from not necessarily the sexy startups, right? With brand names. These are 10-year-old companies that's been around for a long time. They're profitable, they have money, they have skin in the game, but then they have no ability to attract high caliber talent because you are competing, on super high salary and benefits and stuff like that. And this enables them access to high caliber talent pool without having that um, sort of cost base. So it kind of levels up the playing field for a lot of, not only in the startup sector, but also in the not for profit, in sort of established SMB services as well. And that's sort of like general like observation I'm making in terms of where the demand is coming from. It also gives like early stage companies a way to test founding CEO, or not CEO, but founding C-suite positions. Instead of going straight into bed with this person who becomes suddenly a co-founder, you can sort of hire them on 3-6 months basis to see if you vibe with them before committing full time into more of a permanent arrangement.
I like that vibe leadership.
Yeah.
It's true though,
Everything
right?
is
Because it's very relationship based. It's very trust based, and I think you guys can attest to this too. But like in the last, and I've been doing fractional full time for about 3 years now, over 3 years, and in the last year and a half, I'm just seeing like an influx of people on LinkedIn who are also fractional, right? But you kind of dig in deeper and go, are you really fractional? Are you a senior level position person who's led teams, built functions? Have you actually been doing this for 20 years? Like, I'm not saying 20 years is a benchmark, but some people have been doing this, like they're unemployed. And that's great. It's a good way for them to make an income, but they're serious about making themselves a business, because this is, I think, fractional leaders, what makes them quite unique is that they are their own business. And so they have skin in the game. They are their own reputation. They need to deliver. And so I think that is a key difference between what a true fractional is versus uh, still moving into fractional.
correct. You gave me a few things that is prompting me to ask this next question. I'm itching to ask this next question. I'm probably going to ask, Zach and Reese to share this. Now, is fractionals only limited to certain roles? Whether it's only limited to senior roles, whether it's C-suite, like what kind of roles and functions are best suited for a fractional role? How do I, as a startup founder, right? Like, here's my experience. My Kickstarter is built on fractionals. My CPO is a fractional. My head of design service fractional. My head of product growth is fractionals. I don't have money to pay them full time. That's the actual reason. But I do love to work with them for long. But also it gives me the opportunity to date and see how the relationship works. But I'm curious. Is it only limited to certain roles, certain genre, or how do you see this?
Yeah.
After
You
you,
know,
Zach.
I'll go from a community perspective. I've got about we've got about 970 people in the database, and it covers every possible permutation of work that you could possibly imagine. I think the top three were marketing, product, and then engineering. But CFOs have been doing this since the dawn of time, and you get right down to some incredibly super narrow niches, and that tends to be at either ends of the spectrum. It's either, oh my god, that's amazing, you're one of 3 people on the planet who can do that, to the other end, which is yeah, that's just way too abstract and niche. No one's ever going to pay you to do that. We've even seen some examples recently of government getting involved, and starting to look for fractional kind of executive level talent. So look, I think coming back to Angela's point around the focus and the emphasis on value that you provide, if you need something done for your business, there's someone who can do it for you, and you don't have to employ them full time anymore. I think that's the general takeaway. Reese, anything to add on that?
Yeah, look, I've found my personal experience with the sort of roles that I'm doing. Like the 3 businesses that I'm working with now, I'm working in very, very different roles for them. So for Matter, they're an IoT startup based out of WA. I'm doing really BD strategy type work, and I'm really true fractional in there. And I'm on a retainer basis, but I'm like you said earlier, Zach. I've got the email. I'm part of the business. I'm in the meetings. I'm helping to drive that forward, and I'm respected and valued for my experience in that. Whereas the other two businesses that I'm working with, I'm doing very different things, but I'm still very much fractional. And on retainer, might be a little bit more projecty, but it's a real variety of things and skills that I'm providing into those things. But I think what I've found is that the vibing that you mentioned earlier, Angela, that's definitely a key with the founders and the owners that I'm working with. They keep you around because they vibe with the value that you bring, and you're definitely rolling up the sleeves. I work with an organic farmer called Eldridge Fresh Organic.
I kind of lost Reese there.
Yeah, look, if I can pick up that vibe comment as well to roll on that, it seems to be a truism across the board that there's a real emphasis on cultural fit. And my current working theory for this is, if you're a fractional executive, you've got 15, 20 years experience. So it's almost like table stakes that you can do the job. And then the question very quickly becomes, is this going to be enjoyable? If I bring this person in, are they a good fit for the team, the culture? Is it going to be a fun ride? Sorry, Reese, we just lost you there for a minute.
That's all right. You got me back.
That's
all right. I was probably starting to ramble anyway.
Can't believe you cut him off like that, Benji.
But here's the thing. I've been, for the last 10 minutes of getting into understanding fractional, I've been hearing you tell about this vibe and trust, and it's more relationship based. So my question, and maybe we'll start with Angela. Angela, what are some of the biggest barriers in adopting this new form of talent on demand or leadership on demand? Is it skills, trust? What do you say? Like, what's the biggest? Like, if I'm a startup, right? I've just done Series A. I see there is some advantages in subscribing to this leadership on demand service. It's exciting. It looks valuable, but what do you think are the barriers of me adopting this, and how do I come over those barriers?
I think the biggest barrier is probably the lack of standardization when it comes to definition, the roles of work, and the ways of working, what the fractional engagement could be and should be. How do you build them? How do you work with them? Is it fully remote? Like all these different things, it's not quite standardized. If you talk to, at the moment, you look at around Australian fractional marketplace, right? Like not talking about marketplaces and platform, but the market landscape, everyone would go, well, it depends. And I think that is the biggest barrier to driving the adoption of fractional leadership. We need to really, as an industry, come together and go, okay, what is the gold standard fractional leadership model, so that when we talk about fractional leadership, companies know how to engage with fractional leaders. And I feel like that is the biggest blocker. It's not so much the talent side. Everyone, like, there are amazing caliber of talent out there who are available for hire. The second, and then if give it time and in the right place, of course, you'll be able to connect with the right people. But I think ultimately it comes down to there's no standard way to engage. I think everyone's still trying to figure this out, but of course, I think it's the industry slowly is maturing. Hopefully, Zach, Reese. But that's my view. I think the biggest barrier is the lack of standardization. But I think that's coming together.
I see that more as an opportunity than a barrier, personally. Like I see that when I'm talking to businesses that have never before put on a fractional, and they go, "Oh, that's actually a great idea," then they have to kind of change the way of thinking, because Seek and LinkedIn and all of the standard ways of employing people pigeonholes roles, it pigeonholes, what those people should be doing in their business, and that. So, people like yourself, Benji, who have, gone out and gone, hang on, I don't need to employ a person to do this. I've got a role to fill. And it's only this period of time. I think it actually, I see that lack of definition as an opportunity for people who will be leaders in businesses. So they're the ones that actually find it easier to break out into different sort of ways of working. I think probably for me, the bigger barrier is that when you're moving from being a full-time employee, or even a consultant that's been working with the Big Four or something like this, you don't know how to run a business. And being a fractional worker, you're actually running your own business. And I think that's one of the things that I think My Gigsters helps out with. I think it's one of the things that probably I don't know too much about Shepherd, but from our perspective, from the Fraxio perspective, that's really where we're wanting to open up the possibilities, so that the the revenue streams for fractional workers can be really open up to different ways of that. You mentioned earlier, Benji, the opportunities with potentially getting equity, potentially getting some sort of options. I think the biggest barrier is how do you kind of tie those things up in a really good way, that both the business that you're being fractional for and your own business, when you're like me, I'm a fractional worker, I'm getting value and we're both getting agreed value, and we've got a nice solid contract around how those things work. I think that's really the biggest barrier from my perspective.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in one quick one there. As much as all these green shoots and growth has been lovely, there's still a massive awareness problem. And one of the signs that I see the Australian market being relatively immature, particularly compared to the US or UK and others, is it's still SMBs, like Angela mentioned, and high growth companies that are taking advantage of fractionals. Whereas in the US, Fortune 100 companies are using senior leadership talent in a really flexible way. I think that's an indicator that we're not there yet, and hopefully we're a fast follow like we normally are. But we're still at that very early stage where there's a lot of education and advocacy required for people to understand it.
I have a curveball question, something that you may or may not like, but I'm going to ask anyway because we need some controversy in this live chat. So, now are you guys calling fractional as another glorified definition of freelancer, or are you terming fractional as a different breed of talent? Now, why fractionals are different to other forms of non-demand talent? Like, I could go get a talent on demand on Upwork or Expertise 60 or from LinkedIn or whatever, right? What is your role as a community or a marketplace in not only defining fractionals as a way to go, but what sets you apart from like a traditional freelancing kind of an opportunity?
Jump at it, Reese. You're not.
Yeah, look, for me, it's definitely not a we just need this bit of marketing work done. It's not we just want this bit of coding done. It's really about embedding yourself in the business, and being being a trusted advisor, being a valued member, but you're not required to be there full time. So so one of the big things I found to really enable the businesses that I'm working with, I always connect them. I connect them so that they know that I'm providing value to other businesses, and that also kind of that sets it up so that they understand that I'm not working for them full time, and I'm working with other businesses, and then they start to get value off of those things as well, and they learn from those kind of that sharing experience. So I definitely think you're never going to get very far as a real fractional if you are pitching yourself to do tiny little contracts. I think it's counterproductive from a business perspective to do that. I don't know what your take is on it, Zach.
Yeah, I think fractional executive. There's two parts there. So there's the part-time freelancer consultant aspect to it, but there's also the executive part, and that's I think that's really one of the big differences as well. The gig economy has come for almost every other aspect, but C-suite or senior people haven't been engaging in this way. There's been advisors, and sometimes you get people in as a consultant, but rarely have people really got involved and got hands-on in the company and got really doing some operational work as well as the strategic piece. So I do think it's a new way of working. I do think it's here to stay. I don't think the gig economy, the flexible economy, is going anywhere. There's supply and demand kind of headwinds pushing it forward. So I think it's here to stay, and all the data seems to support that. Your comment before, Benji, around on LinkedIn on the supply side. When I started 3.5-ish years ago, there were about 2,000 people on LinkedIn calling themselves fractional. And last time I saw the numbers, it's about 160,000, and that isn't capturing everybody who's doing it. So it's definitely a thing, and I think it's here to stay.
Question, Angela, and probably you touched upon this early on, and I wanted to ask you or maybe start with you to comment on is it seems that we are on a trajectory of growth. There are, like any other early stage marketplace formalization, there is lack of awareness, lack of definition, lack of what's the right thing to do, what's the benchmark. So I think that's like Ree's point, it's an opportunity, but also some things to do. And I think the onus is on people like you and the communities like Zach Holt to bring that benchmark into the industry. But as a builder in this space, as someone who's building an active marketplace to help connect businesses with these talents, how do you see this industry playing out in the next 3 to 5 years? Like, what's your foresight on this industry? Maybe, what would happen in 2028 or 2030? What do you think will happen?
Well, first of all, I think it will be normalized. It will be less novel. So this whole question around what is fractional will no longer be asked, hopefully. Let's do our job properly. But I would say, I think probably more marketplaces like ours or agency placement places will come to play, because I think at the moment a lot of fractional gigs are done through word of mouth, right? Referrals. Hey, do you know someone who's a virtual? This is a once upon a time name, right? Virtual CFO or fractional CMO. Like, and that only goes so far. But if you now have suddenly a talent pool of 10 people to pick from, to pick the right experience, right background for your business, including the vibe, right, that we talked about, then that's a win-win for everybody, because that just raises the bar of fractional leadership for everybody, but also increases the talent pool for businesses overall.
Yeah, and I think picking up another of the points you made before, Angela, I think the concept of sliding into fractional and sliding out into kind of full-time work, like it's not going to be an alternative choice of one or the others. And that's where I hope that the community can help people pick up the operational skills. Somebody comes in with 20 years marketing experience. I'm not going to tell them how to market. I've got no idea. They're like, that's their domain. But I can help you figure out, how to market yourself, how to get set up, what the structure looks like, what an engagement, here's a contract, all that operational piece. And so people can hopefully very easily move into a fractional way, whether it's, they want a little bit of time before their next full-time gig, or they're going traveling, or they want to spend time with their kids. We've got a lot of young families in the community, whatever that looks like, and then go back into full-time employment if that's the right fit. And I think, when I was first starting out, I was very concerned that this was going to be a one-way street. that if I do this, I will never get a full-time gig again. And I can hand on my heart say that I'm at 10 times the operator that I was 3 years ago. And if you put me head to head with that guy, I'd crush him, because you just get exposed to a whole breadth of things that you haven't done before. So my hope is it'll be a lot more fluid landscape as well, rather than you're a fractional or a full-timer.
Yeah.
And we've got a bunch of moonlighters in the community as well, people who have real jobs, full-time jobs, and then do a bit of fractional on the side.
I want to add to this, because I think it's quite important. I hope it really comes true. It's the organizational structure, the business structure that then supports fractional way of working, so that no longer people will be asking, hey, okay, I love the concept of fractional, but what does that look like in real life? Like, wow, how would that work with my team? It could be maybe an increase in hybrid model where you have the fractional leaders coming in on a 1-2 days a week basis, but you have operators, mid-level management doing the day-to-day execution and driving the change within the business. I think this sort of hybrid model, I hope we get to see more of that in the next 3 to 5 years. This would then start to normalize this way of working, which actually really is a win-win, I think. It's cost effective. You don't have to think about bonus, all that fancy stuff that comes with full-time exec salary, but you have access to themselves, the skills, the network, the experience, and so forth. So I think it's a great sort of new talent pool that is sort of untapped.
I want to completely agree with that. I think that it's massive. It's going to be massive. There's a massive opportunity for companies like us and businesses like my own personal business. But I think it's also opening up the talent pool for those people that are returning to work after having kids, for those people who are, like I say, like me, post 50 and, trying to provide value into businesses. I think there's also a massive talent pool of, migrant workers that, are actually stuck doing, the menial, repetitive gig economy stuff when they've actually got great experience from other places to be providing into that talent pool as well. So, yeah, I totally think it's going to be launching. I also know personally, even people that are post-retirement who have so much to offer and can actually come in and do fractional work quite easily and still, maintain their way of living is a massive opportunity as well for businesses to be able to latch onto that pool of talent. So yeah, I think it's going to be massive for us moving forward.
Thanks for sharing. There's two parts to this, right? One, I think we clearly highlighted the need of awareness and the adoption for businesses to leverage and connect with this talent on demand. And I think that's what the industry is moving towards. And startups are the adopters of the industries. But I also hear there's another side of the market, which is the fractions themselves. And you highlighted about them being a sole trader, they are a business entity themselves, and it comes with some blessing in disguise, which means you got to have your own regime of financial administration, tax obligation, GST, all of that. Yeah. So I think, can anyone give maybe a minute to share a tip or something for people who are out there thinking of fractional? Hey, yes, it is fun, it's flexible, you got all of this world of opportunities to put yourself out there and help others, but you just need to be mindful there are a few things that you need to consider. And can anyone quickly, maybe Zach, share your experience of being a fractional? Yeah.
The two things. One, some advice that was passed down to me, which I wish I knew at the start. The very first thing you should do when considering moving into fractional space is talk to your partner, because you're usually going from a fairly decent salary and a nice package, and it comes in, they just get paid every month, and you're going to enter into this wild roller coaster of feast or famine cycle, where you never know where the next client is coming from. And second, after 3.5 years of doing this, I still struggle with this. revenue into your company is not salary. It doesn't mean that I can spend it when it comes in. You've got to allow for tax, you've got to allow for expenses, you've got to allow for all sorts of things. So having a good financial understanding is definitely key to surviving. And I'm still working on that, by the way.
100% double down on that. For me, I was lucky. I was in an business advisory role for many years, where I worked with hundreds of businesses, and had my own businesses in the past, so I came into it a little bit prepared, but I still don't get it right. I still, in terms of the tax thing, and so I think having a structure around that, and having some platform in order to provide that assistance. And I know My Gigsters has got some assistance down that path, particularly for the gig work side. And I think from our perspective, Fraxio will be leveraging off of that as well. I think you definitely, I mean, talking to your partner is always a good idea, I'd say, Zach, by the way. So I've been married for 25 years, and I can say that's also something I still don't get right. So good advice.
I think thanks for sharing it, and I think it's important to for people out there interested in fractionals, or they've just started being fractionals, is to understand that there are some items to consider on how to be efficient. I got a hot tip, by the way. If you are a fractional, you can call a friend, a fractional CFO, and get fractional financial help. So you can fractionalize some of your own business activity through another fractional. So I think that's where the whole community comes into play. So my last summary question is to Angela. How important is marketplaces and community in this whole equation? Like, why do you all have to exist in whatever form that you're existing right now? But what makes you, not just you in a sense, but what's the need of a platform or a marketplace to exist?
Okay, well, I can talk business or I can talk personal, right? But I think I'll go with the personal angle. For me, going fractional was a game changer personally, because I just had a 3-year-old son, a newborn 3 years ago, and I looked around at my circle of friends who are all new parents, and we didn't really fit into the 9-to-5 mold anymore. And looking around, a lot of them have made, the role got made redundant. They stepped down from the senior executive role. Just because they couldn't afford the long hours anymore, they wanted flexibility. And I want more marketplaces and agencies like this to help make fractional more normal, so that this becomes an option for mid-career folks who are no longer interested in climbing the corporate ladder, but have so much value to offer because they've done it for 20 years. I want this to be normal for them and an option for them, so that they don't have to give up on a 180K salary and take a 45K salary pay cut. It shouldn't be like that. Things are expensive, especially in Sydney. We need a better way to feed mouths. So that's sort of my personal motto, and that's why Shepherd exists.
I actually was talking to somebody the other day about the problem with these clauses that get the non-compete clauses and stuff like that get put into contracts, and I think that it's increasingly becoming relevant that those things don't help people. Oh, my dog doesn't want to hear about it. those things don't actually help people in their careers, and so they're being stopped a lot as well. So I think the more that that government realizes that the way of small businesses and medium-sized businesses and large businesses limiting the way that people can earn money once they leave a role, or even while they're still working with another company, is problematic. The sooner that gets sorted out, it'll make it a lot easier for us as fractionals as well, and to bring those people into our communities.
Yeah, and look at just to round it out. I think we were all down in South Start, and I think we agreed on the pipeline that the community, the fractional exec community, can help people become a fractional, and then they go to Reese or to Angela, and then we'll find them some jobs. And so that's really like all good marketplaces, connecting the need of businesses who need access to that talent, who can allow them to grow their companies, and I think the thing that we haven't touched on yet in all of this is my other favorite pet topic, which is AI. And I think as the workspace is evolving so rapidly to include all these wonderful new AI tools, they're going to be more flexible. That's part of that, and a big part of that equation, I think, is experienced operators armed with AI tools, and that sounds a lot to me like fractionals, where the knowledge is no longer a moat because you can talk to ChatGPT and get a marketing plan, but what you actually do with it and how you train the team and how you implement it, that becomes the real secret sauce, and that's where I think fractionals have a lot to offer as well.
Thank you. We'll come towards the end of the session. Obviously, now I would love to keep unpacking about this, but I'm sure over time there'll be new topics within fractionals that we could unpack, and specifically around, legislation, specifically around adoption, specifically around different risk that this industry might carry. But um, I'm really, really happy that you were able to give me a really good sense of different perspectives to this space from the marketplace, from the fractional themselves, and from the companies on how they can look forward to adopting this. So really, thank you for that. I do have some. I think it's a key thing, especially after COVID, especially in my Geeksters world. We've been working with gig workers. What traditionally used to be just delivery drivers. It is not that anymore. I'm until recent times when we were still in the B2C world, you wouldn't believe we had 54 types of gig workers, and it was always an excitement to go open the list and see a new type of gig worker come through. And I discovered that you can be a drone pilot and you can work for the government, and all you fly is drones and you get paid for it. So it's pretty cool to see the democratization of skill on demand, and it's only organic, and I'm so excited to see leadership on a subscription demand basis.
CEOs in there as well.
Yeah. So pretty exciting space. I'm going to open the floor for some questions. So if you've got any questions, you can drop it down on the chat and I'll receive it.
I think the biggest question that people have been having is how do we actually watch this? Because it doesn't look like it's gone. It doesn't look like it's gone onto the LinkedIn Live.
It has gone to the LinkedIn Live, but it is not under the event. It is under the My Geeksters page. So if you just come onto the My Geeksters page, you'll find it. But I'll put a video of this recording again, both on podcast and other series, so you can still catch up if you didn't miss this one. So pretty fine. So questions, I do have some questions that have come through that I'm happy to get started with. And if anyone has more questions, please just drop down. Question number one is, how do we treat the risk of intellectual property or conflict of interest, where you say that we got a senior person coming into the business and they got eyes into the secret recipes that we have or the ways of doing business, and they might be working for another potential competitor or an adjacent industry that is close to us? How, as a founder, startup founder, how do I manage this?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the industry and your offer, and if there really is a secret sauce. I know most founders think that their own product and their own service is a beautiful, unique snowflake. The reality is, particularly when you're building, it's all about the fundamentals. I think the same way that you bring people into the organization, you have advisors, you have investors, all of that carries some degree of risk of your competitors finding out what you're doing. So just take the same protocols that you use there and apply it to the fractional space. Be sensible about it. Ask for a check. Make sure they're not working for your direct competitor, and then just get heads down and keep building.
Yeah, I think it comes down to due diligence, really. Just make sure that you're hiring the right person that beyond the CV. Due diligence. The fractional operators are businesses themselves, so they will have their own public liability insurance. They have the PL insurance. They got themselves covered, but you really should have this non compete sort of thing if that's important to you, and yeah, check for that before you hire them.
Yeah, look, I'd also say from both sides of the story that it's really important that everybody's on the same page, and it's like with any contract. Um, I've found there's a few people sending me potential contracts as a fractional that just that all of the risk is on my side, and it's not. You've got to be, I guess, from a fractional perspective, you've got to be prepared to say, hang on, this doesn't actually work for me, and I don't actually think it's really good for you as a business owner to be putting these sorts of limitations on somebody that you want to work like this. So I think having an open dialogue even before you start in that role is only going to set things up to be much better than if you're taking on something that's just not going to work. And as soon as an employer is putting you in a space that it's an employment contract, then things aren't right. So it's not going to be good for the business if they're employing you as an employee and you think that you're actually a fractional worker. So yeah, make sure that um, you're not getting into an employment contract as opposed to a fractional B2B contract. They're two very different things.
You sound like my accountant, Reese.
Well,
Look,
I think
down on that because I keep getting drilled by my accountant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that so some of the key parts here are, I call when I'm working. I have the capability of saying this is what I'm charging, and I have the capability of deciding when those things occur. Obviously you have to work with the business owner, with the company that you're working with around that. But if you don't have the capability of making those calls as a fractional, then you're probably actually an employee, and sham contracting is a massive problem. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the business that is trying to just get you to be an employee, and it's because they'll get found out and the tax man will come after them. And if they've got you sham contracting as a fractional worker, then the fact is you're probably getting shafted and not getting as much money as you should.
Mm. As another side to this question is the business continuity risk that on-demand service generally poses, right? Here I am, I'm a startup founder, I've got a senior executive fractional, and it seems like we are in a no strings attached relationship now, and we are vibing and we build things together. And I have this risk that this person may leave me or choose not to do fractional after a point, and that is a business continuity risk for me. And how do I mitigate or how do I manage this risk?
Can I ask you a question back at that? Because like, if you have an employee, what's really stopping that anyway? So in both of those cases, it's all about relationships, and so long as you're holding a good relationship and open way of communicating in those spaces, then that risk should be getting mitigated. Obviously, there's contractual things around that as well, but for me, the biggest part is good communication. I don't know what you think, Angela.
I think it comes down to okay, let me take a step back and answer a slightly different way. as a fractional leader, a lot of times you come in to build capabilities from something that doesn't exist. And that capability means being able to do something eventually without you as a leader being in a business. And I think it comes down to ensuring that the contract you have with the fractional leader, the statement of work, the game plan, the proposal, whatever you call it, has that built in. So as an outcome, right? So build capability, start, and then end with transitioning into in-house team, hiring in-house team, or continue on a fractional basis with in-house capability built in via hiring team or using AI or whatever it is. I think that's a key when it comes to leadership. It's building capabilities that didn't exist before, and it's your job as a founder or company leader to manage that expectation with the fractional person that's coming in. And it is the fractional person's responsibility as a business of their own name to deliver on that promise.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's a little bit having your cake and eating it too. Like if you want somebody to stick around for the long term, it's going to cost you money. That's the reality. You know, it's the whole point of this model is it completely de-risks you bringing somebody in. If it doesn't work out, done. We're done at the end of the month. See you later. But as Ange was saying, you know, you build that into the process. You know, if it's developing a new capability, then you get a playbook that's attached to that. You get the team trained. There may be some hiring of the team to come in at the end of it. It's not just, okay, they're leaving, we're not going to do that anymore. You know, that has to go into the planning and give it some thought.
Yeah, not shelfware, right? Like we've all seen that come and go in companies of all sizes, like consultants coming in and developing a 500 page slide deck and no one really does anything with it. Like that's not the best practice, I would say. And yeah, you need to kind of build that into your engagement model.
Look, I've been lucky enough over the years to be in many different roles in many different industries, and always I've built a role around myself and built that into the business that I'm working with. So you know, I think that's part of what defines the fractional executive as opposed to somebody that's, you know, just doing a short-term gig contract. You know, you're actually building, strategically building into the business something that works. And if you're not providing that value into that business, then it's, you know, it's not right. It's time to go. So, you know, it's that open communication is massively key.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think beautifully summarized towards the very end. It all comes to relationship. It all comes to that trust. And for listeners out there, if you're a founder or if you're a growing business who wants to tap into this workforce, these are the people that you need to connect with, because they will make sure that all the T's and C's and contracts and all of those little nuances are being taken care, or you're aware of it, and they'll guide you through that process. And also, if you're a fractional, you know, please connect with these folks, because they will also give you the good, bad, and ugly stories of being a fractional, and that'll help you to prepare yourself and be more optimized and be more happy in doing this role. So I'm really, really happy that I took the time, to, thanks for sharing this with me and for the other listeners. And for those who are out there, please reach out to Zach at Fractional Executives. So the links are there in the same post. And I will do a comment and I'll do a follow-on post with the links, so you can follow me and you can get those links. Angela with heyshepherd.com.au. .com. Yes, and Reese with Fraxio.io. So please go check out their websites, connect with them on LinkedIn. Even if you don't end up using their service, they're amazing people to connect with and be part of their story. I'm so excited to see what's happening in this space going forward. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Benji.
Thanks, Benji.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ange. Thanks, Reese.
Nice to meet you guys. Good to see you again.
Thank you.